Oops, sorry. What I could probably do is,
Go right ahead.
okay, well, start off with saying welcome to Saxman. And here in Saxman, these particular setting, as far as the totem poles, was done during the early mid-30s, primarily for during the CC days, just for job folks, keeping people employed here in this community. These poles were initially set out in the villages and outlining villages, and they were brought to this community, and it was set up as a totem park. A total of 29 totem poles here in this community. Not all poles tell stories, and oftentimes we're asked, how do you read the story of the pole, from the top down to the bottom up? You actually don't. You just tell the story. You take a look at it, and it's a story. And how you come to know that story is it's told to you, just like I'm doing now. And there's some poles that is a potlatch pole, just to commemorate some event that had taken place in the person's life or the tribe or the clan that pole was raised for. Now, you take a look at, we'll start off with this one pole here. This is the Seward's pole. This is kind of like it was a potlatch pole, but also was like a debtor's pole and a shame pole. Why a shame? Because when a potlatch is given, one is expected in return. Even though Seward was counseled to give a potlatch in return, he never did. And so as a result, a potlatch was given in his honor, to show folks that he is indebted to the people of this community and is yet to pay it back. Once he pays it back, then that pole can come down. You see the box that he's sitting on is to show the wealth of who he is. You see the rings on the headpiece. He's a very wealthy person, and yet chooses not to give a potlatch in return. So as a result, his family is shamed until that has occurred. In this particular case, it would be the family of the United States, because he was representing that family. Now, you have another pole here, which is the Keats pole. You have the three bears, and then the mother bear and the man. This particular pole is kind of related to this one here as well. And what occurred is that a man was out hunting, and he was gone for days, and then became somewhat disoriented, and with this he fell in love with this very beautiful woman, who turned out to be a female brown bear. They had 3 cubs, and for a long time he during their marriage, he really wanted to go back and visit his family back in the village. And his wife was very reluctant, and finally gave in and instructed the cubs that if this should occur, and he was instructed not to look at his first wife. He was instructed not to do this, and if this would occur, it would cost him his life. And as he was visiting his family in the village, he was walking around, kind of like came around the corner of a house, and there stood his first wife. And so with that, as instructed by their mother, the 3 cubs killed the man, their father. So as a result, the mother. So when you see these 3 cubs looking down, and the mother of this particular pole, she's way up in the mountain, and she's always looking down on the village of where her husband was killed, feeling the sorrow of it. And that's the part of this story of this particular pole here. Okay. Now, you see on the pole here, you see a man upside down, he's another guy who, that's an issue. I'm going to take that stop sign down then.
Okay, go on.
So what had occurred is that a potlatch was given, and again the potlatch was not given in return, and for thus this man is upside down on the pole, and it's kind of like a shame pole. It's a very serious issue in the earlier days because that was your family. You're representing your family, you know. So you do everything to protect the family. In this particular case, he didn't. So.
These are all the streets you had paved.
Yeah, every street in our community. And I'm really, really pleased about that. Only because we exceeded or well in advance of the 2049 when these roads were scheduled to be paved. So I'm really pleased about that. Now this little person, he kind of like an instructional pole. You know, as young men were raised, they were raised by their uncle, the mother's brother, because they're of the same tribe. The mother's eagle, the brother is an eagle, and all the mother's sons are raised by the brother. So in the earlier day when we said the tide is out, the table is set. And why? Because we can go after clams, go after cockles, go after sea cucumbers, go after seaweed, and go after devil's fish, which is octopus. And so in this particular case, when we're instructed to digging up the clams and the cockles, and also after the octopus. Take a branch. You see some of these branches at the end of it, it's very bushy. And so you take the branch, cut it, and use the thick end for digging. And when you know that there's going to be a large oyster, how you know is that the breathing hole is larger than the smaller breathing hole for the clams and the cockles. So you know that's a prize. That's what you really want, a prize. So in doing that, you dig. The uncles always say, never stick your hand. You can dig the hole. Once the hole's dug, never stick your hand in that hole. You use the branch end of this digging stick. Stick it in there, and the clam, the oyster will close on it, and then you can pull it out. Well, in this case, this young man, as he was instructed, he chose to stick his hand under the rock because he couldn't see it. Stuck his hand under the rock where he was digging, and the oyster closed. What occurred, he called out to the people that was on the beach with him. They tried to pull. Tide was coming in, and so they sent his cousins to go back and get the stomach of the seal. And what occurred is that the stomach of the seal has the intestines still connected. And they filled it with air, and that was his breathing apparatus. But as the tide came up, where the intestine was narrower, it just collapsed. And so as a result, he lost his breathing apparatus. And so therefore he drowned. So the instruction of this particular pole, oysterman pole, was that you always need to listen to your uncle. Always listen to him. And if it's not your uncle, it's an elder. So this is an instructional pole.
Very good, very good.
Years went without a stop sign here because federal highway dollars, every time you come to a T like this, it's required to put a stop sign. And I just came unglued. And this is a traditional park. You want to put a stop sign right there by a totem pole? It just doesn't seem right. So hopefully I'll get that squared away and taken down.
Alright. And first of all, let me just have you count to 10 so I can make sure the sound's okay.
Okay. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10.
That's working. Well, first of all, tell me how you wound up being involved with the running of the town, amongst many other things.
Well, the organized village of Saxman, which is a federally recognized tribe, in my opinion, for years was kind of like a sleeping giant, a sleeping political giant. And I felt that my input to this community could be done through the organized village of Saxman. So I ran for president, and oddly enough got elected, and I've been president since then. And in actuality, my thought on the tribe itself was exactly true. A very powerful political organization. So.
You mentioned to me that your father was involved.
Oh yeah, my father actually was mayor of this community for 38 years, and he was the Alaska Native Brotherhood president for a number of years, as my mother was president of Alaska Native Sisterhood for a number of years. So we, my brother and sisters and I, we just kind of was born into the leadership role because that's what they did, you know. So we just kind of followed in their footsteps. So.
And tell me a little bit about Cape Fox. And there's a building down the street that's got your name on it.
Well, actually, the building is Cape Fox corporate headquarters, Joseph C. Williams Sr. That's my father.
Okay.
And Cape Fox Corporation came into its inception through the Native Land Claim Settlement Act of 1971, and a very successful company today, and actually since its inception in 1974. They've done quite a bit in this community as far as timber cutting, and then also now pretty intimately involved in tourism.
Yeah, talk a little bit about one of the things that the youth council did was they showed me the play that they put on. Talk a little bit about that and what your feelings on that particular play.
The Boy Who Fed the Eagle. You know, this came out of Cape Fox Corporation, and it was the idea that the kids would be able to show the visitors, tourism, once that they came to this community. And the kids are the professionals, actually. They really are. As far as professional in dealing with tourism, they speak very professionally. Not all kids that are teenagers are able to do this. And I believe it's because of their involvement with tourism here in Saxman, with Cape Fox Corporation, Cape Fox Tours. That's how they become very articulate. So.
And while we're on the subject of the youth, talk a little about what you think about the youth organization in town.
Well, here as far as our youth organization here in Saxman, I'm just really excited about the youth. I'm excited about the future of Saxman, primarily because kids today are doing more organizationally and more professionally than they ever did when I was a kid. And they have plans they're talking about and they're implementing things that we as kids never did. And a prime example of that is attending National Congress of American Indians. Now, I know it cost, right at about $2,200 per student to attend a National Congress of American Indians convention for the entire week. They go out and earn the money. And they send, last year we sent 4. It was the least number of kids, 5, least number of kids we've ever sent. But they earned every dollar. So I'm really excited because they're doing what they say they're going to do. So,
they came and spoke to your council meeting, and well, frankly, you look very proud of them.
Well,
Especially of Kevin and his name just slipped my head.
Randy.
Randy, yeah.
Well, you got to keep in mind with Randy, if you knew Randy a year ago, he would never have done what he did Friday night. Never have done that. But today he is. And I think it's because of his involvement with the youth group, because he's rubbing elbows with people like Kevin, and also like Cheryl DeWitt and Elizabeth Williams and Stephanie. You know, they may be older and to a certain degree, but in others, as far as age is concerned, they're not. But I tell you what, it's rubbing off, and I see some very positive growth in the youth in our community. Very pleased about it.
Wow. Talk a little bit about Kevin, because I did do an interview. Actually, I interviewed both Kevin and Randy, but tell me a little bit about Kevin.
One thing you got to know about Kevin, and that is when Kevin must have been about 14, 15 years old, to talk with Kevin, he would never look you directly in the eye and answer your questions. He would always look down and kind of mumble his answers, and you'd almost have to go right to his face to hear what he was saying, because he was bashful. He was not sure of himself. That isn't the Kevin today. Kevin today has a lot of security in himself, and that's good. And I believe that's because of his involvement with the youth group. And he has a lot of security in what he has to say. And I think that has a lot to do with his involvement with K-Fox Tours, which daily he gets in front of 100, 200 people per sitting, and there's 4 or 5 of them during the day, and he talks about Saxman, and that's good. And so.
And what do you think about Carlin?
Carlin is a godsend to those kids. Carlin is a godsend to those kids, without question. She has a heart for the kids. She's young enough to know what they're thinking. She has the energy enough to do what they want to do. And she has a heart for it, and that's really, really good. She certainly compliments Yede Hicks, who came here with the youth, just to support the youth. And so I'm just really, really pleased by that.
And speaking of what Kevin talks about, tell me a little bit about the history of Saxman, how it came to be.
Saxman, this location of Saxman was selected as a site to have folks from Cape Fox Village, Tungus Island, Mares Island to come here to live. This was done on the promise of 2 things. One from the Bureau of Indian Affairs saying that they would build a school, and the other from the Presbyterian missionaries saying that they'd build a church. Because there were, I believe, 9 villages involved, they didn't want to show favoritism to one village over the other, thus requiring all 9 villages to move. And one location was Ketchikan, the other location was Saxman. And those promises were fulfilled. A church in each location was constructed. A school building in each location was built as well. This was what the leadership of the day wanted. Their children, grandchildren to go to school, their children, grandchildren to go to church. And that's what has occurred. And so during the time that the tribal leaders that were coming to find the place along with a man named Samuel Saxman, ran into a storm and thus lost their lives. So in honor of Samuel Saxman, who was the Presbyterian missionary, this place was named after him. And so that's how Saxman got its name. Founded in, actually settled in 1894, with the settlement of about 75 to 100 folks living in this community. Today we have right at about 450 or so.
All right. Here's my big question. Tell me all the organizations that you're involved with.
Okay. Actually, my involvement with the organizations began when I was 16 years old. I was involved in the Alaska Native Brotherhood. That was for a number of years, and then following Alaska Native Brotherhood, got involved with the Tlingit and Haida Central Council, which are Tlingit and Haida Community Council. And then I got elected to the city council upon my return from college, and then got elected into the organized village of Saxman following that. I was city manager of Saxman for just under a year. After I became president of the organized village of Saxman, got involved in on a statewide basis, Alaska Intertribal Council. Through a couple of years of that, I became vice chairman of Alaska Intertribal Council, and that's what I serve today as vice chair of AITC. Through AITC, I was the co-chair of the Millennium Agreement, which was an agreement between the state of Alaska and all the federally recognized tribes in Alaska. And today now serve on a task force that is addressing the reorganization of the Bureau of Indian Affairs. So that's where I'm at today.
And you were talking earlier a little bit about the task force. I mean, how do you feel to be on that task force?
Actually, it's a huge honor to be a member of that task force, primarily because we're addressing issues of the to be on the task force. That's a pretty big deal, I believe, because it's a history-making task force. Why history? Because through this, we're going to decide whether the Bureau of Indian Affairs will be reorganized or not, and what kind of organization we're going to come up with that will service the federally recognized tribes in the United States, and that's a pretty major deal.
Now just so I have it straight, how many people are on the task force?
There are actually 24 tribal representatives with one alternate, so that's a total of 36, and then 14 officials from the Department of Interior.
Okay. Well, tell me what you see in the future for the village of Saxman and the tribe.
What I see as far as Saxman is concerned, and that is, and I could rely this very heavily on the future leadership of our community, which is the youth. I see a lot of economic development in this community that will occur real soon, and we're looking to cater to the tourism aspect of it, and The majority of tourism comes to our community by ship. And so we're looking to construct a dock that will accommodate at least a 900-foot vessel. And so that's a couple thousand visitors at a shot. I think tourism is going to play a very major role, not only in this community of Saxman, but also as it does in Ketchikan as well. But I'm really excited for Saxman because of the leadership that's in the youth of today. I'm really looking forward to it, quite frankly. And so,
And summertime, I've heard you give tours downtown.
I
You give
do
tours
walking tours. It's kind of like with 3 companies that service me, and I do. It's an hour and a half walking tour, generally 15 per walk. Generally, sometimes it's around 20. I don't like to be that many because then the people who are on the peripherals of the tour don't get to hear it all, thus lose some interest. But I like to keep it around 15. I usually have 2 a day, 5 days a week, and I do also cultural presentations to talk about our Tlingit culture. That I do 3 times a week, and I do culture shows. This year I'll have 21 shows this year as opposed to what I had last year was 14. Usually between 55 and 170 per show. Just depends. And what do we do at the show? We talk about our culture. We give them a regalia fashion show, if you will, and do some dancing, give them food. It's close to what we can sell, if you will, salmon and halibut and that kind of things.
Well, tell me about the hat with the big feather.
Well, that's kind of like my calling card, if you will. People here in Ketchikan say, "Oh, I know you." Especially when I'm wearing it, they know who I am because of the eagle feather. And what I've used, the reason I use it now is to kind of keep me warm when it's cold, or kind of cool like now, or keep the rain off my face. Therefore, I don't have to use an umbrella. So that's my expense, my overhead for keeping my business. A pair of shoes and a hat and a jacket, and that's about it. So.
Let me